ended up going to John McCain, and he managed to get an answer for us, which is there was nothing wrong with the trial in terms of safety or quality. They just didn't want to continue with it. And later, so this is now 2026, I found out that about a year before we went through the Pentagon, another company went through, had engaged the same Congress people, had engaged the same military folks, and were making wild claims about how they were already in theater in Iraq and Afghanistan and were being used with a little drop of blood, and that company was Theranos.
George Carpenter is the president of TCA Venture Group, a seasoned entrepreneur, investor, and company builder with 4 companies and over $1 billion in exits. With deep experience scaling ventures and identifying high growth opportunities, George now focuses on finding and supporting the next generation of breakthrough companies, especially in the rapidly evolving AI space. Through his leadership, investment, insights, and founder-first perspective, he continues to help shape the future of innovation by backing visionary entrepreneurs with the potential to build the next unicorn. Let's welcome George.
So George, welcome.
Great to see you, Lillian.
It is so great to have you.
Thank you.
So before we get started with this amazing interview, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
If your life was a movie, what would you call it?
To be honest, I'm Forrest Gump. Like, I keep showing up at these moments where something tectonic is happening in a market or in politics, and I get to benefit from it. So I'm kind of an idiot who knows how to get on a trend.
I love it because, you know, someone in the position that he's in right now, he's saying that he's an idiot, which no one would say, but there's a lot to the story that I can't wait to hear.
Cool.
So tell us, you know, how you started. You built 4 companies,
Yep.
You've exited. Now you're supporting founders with their company. You're looking for the next unicorn in this age of AI. But take us to the back.
Sure.
Take us what's the story in that moment?
My first company was not the hero's journey. And this is something I think we'll talk about, that like being an entrepreneur has a lot of kind of, you know, difficulty and challenge. In my case, I was working for a division of Baxter that I had convinced the CEO we ought to get into this business. And after a few years, he convinced me we were going to get out of this business. And I was too chicken to tell my wife I was going to lose my job. So the easy thing to do was get 92 employees together and buy it from Baxter, which we did. We had no idea what we were doing, but we ended up turning it around, taking it public, and selling it ultimately for 100 times what we paid Baxter.
And he said that's the easy thing to do.
Yeah.
But can you take us back even more?
Sure.
Childhood.
Yeah.
Because after meeting with so many entrepreneurs and interviewing them, there's always something in their childhood that shaped them
Yeah.
to become this person that has this vision and you're willing to go after. Because you said, this is easy. And I'm sure for me, I don't know about you, but for me, that does not sound easy at all. Right? So there's something there. I want to know more.
Well, so all 4 companies, I would get to a point where my mom would ask what I do, and I would explain it to her, and then she would say, you must be running drugs. And in my childhood, I had a paper route, and the paper route went through a nursing home, and I got to meet and know all of my members. And then later I had a job at a pharmacy, and the nursing home ended up getting bought probably by private equity, and no longer could I deliver drugs from the pharmacy. I would have to go through the central office, and then they would upcharge people. Well, I knew all these people. So I ended up going up the fire escapes and sneaking in various ways to get my drugs to the friends that I'd made on my paper route. And so my mom was actually kind of right. That's my whole career. I've always been running drugs in one way or another around some institutional obstacle that says, no, you got to pay me.
And how old were you when you were doing that? How old were you when you started? Or give us a little back.
Paper route, I was 9 or 10. Pharmacy, I was like 14.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I am so intrigued. So how did you get to the point where, okay, I found this niche, I'm going to deliver this service, I'm going to deliver drugs? Like what brought you there?
I think I'm a little brother. So I think I have this thing in me. Most revolutions are started by little brothers. Birth order matters. And so I think I've always had this thing where I perceive unfairness and I want to change it. I don't want to just sit there and watch it squish people's hopes. So I've always had that desire to change things in a way that will make it better for somebody I like. And so that's my thing. I like to do that. And I realize that fits pretty well with the entrepreneurial mindset of people who just get physically uncomfortable with the status quo.
because you got very uncomfortable very young,
Yeah.
right? And how did that feel?
It actually felt good because it's tension and release. You know, there's that tension of this is wrong, but then I can fix it. And that's, I mean, we are all prisoners of our brain chemistry, and dopamine is a hell of a drug.
Oh my gosh, you hit the spot on that one. And you mentioned earlier that you have 4 companies.
Yeah.
Can you give us like a little highlight of what those 4 companies that you started and what that journey looked like?
So the first one, again, it was an involuntary entrepreneurship. I was a chicken, didn't want to tell my wife, ended up buying the company, and we turned it around. All of them have been kind of turnarounds. They were in a place where people were going to walk away from them, but then I thought, there's a couple things you could change, or I could get the right people, usually that, and we could really make this go. 3 out of 4 of them did. One of them was an epic, spectacular disaster, and it was the most fun I've ever had.
So let's talk about that one, because this podcast is called My Overnight Success, my first overnight success, because people see the highlight reel.
Right.
They don't see what is going in. And what I found interesting too is what people say in the public, and then you as a founder, that moment when you realize, oh, I made it. Okay, something is there, because the journey is lonely. It can be lonely. Let's start from the beginning.
To your point, being a CEO is one of the worst jobs because of the loneliness. You think, well, I can tell my friends. If you're a public company, 2 of my companies have been public. You can't. Regulation FD. Can't really tell your board, because once you tell your board, it's a material thing. So, like, who do you confess? I really don't know what I'm doing here. Or this is a change that's going to affect people negatively. How do I bring this out? One thing I've found is having friends who are also CEOs or ex-CEOs is so helpful, because you can talk to them, and you're under kind of a veil of ignorance, cone of silence, and a lot of these challenges, the decisions that you make every day, they really have very few people you can go to. So I encourage entrepreneurs. You can use me, but use somebody as your sounding board who will tell you, no, you're going off the wrong path.
That's a really good advice, because sometimes when you don't know, there's so much doubt in our head.
Right.
And the thing with CEOs, you guys have to make very powerful decisions.
Yeah.
And many times, a lot of people, they won't agree with you, but you know this vision.
Right.
Right. So tell me about the disaster.
Okay.
Let's go there.
So this was a company based here in Orange County that had a technology to use EEG, electroencephalogram.
And is this the 3rd company or the 4th company? The 4th company. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was really on a roll, but it was a tough challenge, because you had to raise a lot of money. I ended up raising like $85 million for it. We had a technology that would predict which medication in the CNS drug category, so think SSRI antidepressants, which will work in your brain versus which will work in my brain. And okay, if you can solve, this is a $21 billion category, huge failure. Like, most people fail the first 2, 3, 4 drugs they have. Huge suicide rate. So I thought, what's the best way to prove this? First, we went and did our trials at UCI, Harvard, Stanford, killed it. Then we went to the military, did trials at Walter Reed. It was really kind of an insurgent thing, not unlike my nursing home, where we sort of went in the back way and we found a way to get a clinical trial, and we had a great person who kind of led it. We were going to do 1,200 people. We ended up doing 114, and we already had a signal for suicidality. We had a 75% reduction in suicidality just by not doing trial and error pharmacotherapy, but actually measuring your brain and saying, your brain looks like one that would react well to Prozac, would not react well to Zoloft. Okay.
So hold on. So all the you said, was it 1,200 people?
Yeah.
Those are people that's testing the drugs.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it ended up being really interesting result. And then suddenly, this would be about 10 years ago, they stopped the trial. So we didn't get to the end point. So then I had to figure out why. And so I did a ton of lobbying. Like every congressperson knew us, ton of TV. Well, we couldn't get an answer, but they didn't want to go forward with the trial. And so I ended up going to John McCain, and he managed to get an answer for us, which is there was nothing wrong with the trial in terms of safety or quality. They just didn't want to continue with it. And later, so this is now 2026, I found out that about a year before we went through the Pentagon, another company went through, had engaged the same Congress people, had engaged the same military folks, and were making wild claims about how they were already in theater in Iraq and Afghanistan and were being used with a little drop of blood. And that company was Theranos.
Oh.
And so literally, we just walked right into a trap. And that was tough. So we ended up raising a ton of money. I only got about a third of it back for shareholders, and we lost millions. But we hit all of our clinical endpoints. And that was just a lesson to me that sometimes, no matter what you do, institutions are going to reject new ideas like a foreign object. And sometimes you just have to outsmart those institutions. And in this one, I didn't.
And that's a really good insight, because our viewers, our listeners are founders in different stages.
Yeah.
Right. In this, you talked about why it didn't work.
Right.
I also want to talk about how did you come up with these ideas, and how did you get it into place and building your team, and when did you know to bring in the money versus building your own, using your own revenue, right? There's so many ways, like entrepreneurship or business, it's not linear. We talked about this before.
Absolutely.
We went live. It's non-linear. And I would love to hear it from your journey and even the mistakes that you made. I know people is a big one.
Yep.
Culture
Yep.
is a big one. Leadership is a big one, right? Love to hear that from you on like tell us all the bruises that you had to go through and then all the healing you had to go through. Because right now you're in a position where you're supporting other founders.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's talk about that.
I think resilience and persistence is probably the best quality. Maybe that and intellectual curiosity for a founder, because you're going to get a bunch of hits. You're going to get more hits than you get rewards, and you've got to kind of be self-rewarding about your progress. I think in one of my companies, I was up for Entrepreneur of the Year, Ernst & Young, in OC, and they did a video interview, and this wonderful accountant was interviewing me, and she said, "So would you do it again?" I said, "No, this is hard." That was not the answer they were looking for. But at a lot of times as a CEO, that's how you feel. Like, man, how did I get myself into this? How do I get myself out of it? And honestly, it wasn't until my fourth company that I realized I'm kind of in a groove here, and I've seen these problems before, and they all got solved. So you do have to have a certain level of Zen-like transcendence to be able to survive that. And I'd say the things that I regret the most are people decisions. Inevitably,
Let's talk about
you're building a team of people who's going to accomplish an objective function. It's like a self-organizing biological system. If you get the right people together, they will outperform you, they will outthink you, and you got to just stand back and let them grow. And that's when you know you've got the best company, when you've got everybody in a position that makes sense. That almost never happens. I mean, I'd say in each of my companies, there was a 2 or 3 year moment where that was the case. But you've got to have the internal strength to say, this part's kind of squeaking and needs to be replaced, and replace those people. And inevitably, I've taken longer and tried to delay making those decisions.
And I want to ask you this. So when you're talking, Jensen Huang always talks about resilience.
Yes.
He said he beats his people up.
Yeah. Yeah.
He talks about it openly.
Yeah.
So when you make those decisions, whether it's restructuring, whether it's letting people go, whether it's this person, the company outgrow the current employees.
Yep.
When you make these very tough decisions mentally, what do you do to prepare yourself? Because I know this is one of the most common mistakes that I made in myself too, of hiring the wrong people. And then you have this fine line of the emotions.
Yep.
And then efficiency.
Yep.
And then really being like, okay, this is where we have to cut the line. And
Yep.
I've seen leaders that are so charismatic. People love them.
Yes.
They're great, but they
Yes.
don't respect them.
Right.
I've seen people that are very competent. They're very smart, but they don't have the people skill.
Yeah.
So even though they're smart, they don't believe in them.
Yeah.
Tim Cook is really great at this. He's very charismatic, right?
Right.
He was he was criticized because when he took over Steve Jobs' position, he was like, he's too charismatic. He has to keep out compassionate. But he was the first guy that had taken Apple to become $1 trillion company.
Right. Right.
So I share that because that's what I always coach my clients about. But I would love to hear, like, when you make these decisions, what are the internal battles that you go through? Because it's lonely.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
It's tough and it's uncertain and you don't know.
Well, and you take what is kind of in the DNA of a founder, which is I can fix things. Okay, I have an oversized respect for my ability to fix problems. So now give me a problem employee, you know, I'm going to think, well, I can make that person what I want them to be. And when you really, really tear that down, it's laziness. I know I'm not going to be able to fix them. I'm overestimating my capability, but I don't want to make the move now because if I fire my VP of sales, I'm going to have less sales. And that's kind of a problem. So I think, sort of the thing I've matured into is I try to realize in myself when I'm deluding myself, that voice in your head that tells you things, that negative talks you. That's not your brain. Your brain is the one that listens to that voice and then says, yeah, that's BS. You got to make this decision now. And learning to listen to that real voice, not the one that's the wrong neurons firing. I think that comes with age.
And let's talk about that because you have obviously 4 companies under your belt, going through a lot of companies, I'm sure.
Yep.
I'm assuming, but I'm sure coming to you're auditing, you're looking, you're meeting all these founders every single day. And when you say the experiences that you went through, age is experience, is wisdom.
Yeah.
What are the biggest experiences or the wisdoms that you have to share with us? And the honest, brutal truth, the better, because my whole goal is people understand and they can learn from you. Yeah. So they can minimize it in their growth and in their trajectory. I
love that question because I probably see 1,000 companies a year, and I can help them, help me help them. The expression is good judgment comes from experience and experience comes from bad judgment. So I feel like I've made all the mistakes possible. I ought to be able to help other people prevent them. So when I see companies, one thing that's a mistake I've made, and one thing I see a lot, is entrepreneurs that are just so excited about this little gadget they made and the process to make that gadget and the many blueprints and the background and the hero's journey. Okay, that's great. What often they'll spend 10 minutes describing it and they won't get to the customer benefit, the real value where the rubber meets the road. And honestly, in my world, you have to work back from that. Mm-hmm. We had an expression at Baxter, until there's a customer, nothing happens. Like, customers are what makes this whole thing work. And so many founders are working in the lab to make the thing, but they're not spending an equal amount of time with actual users to find out, would you value this? Would you pay for it? Would you make this an enterprise sale? And I'll give you an example, my first company. So, I convinced my wife to go along with this. We bought the company. I needed to get financing. The people I got financing from were Chrysler and a big insurance company, because I was
Chrysler, the car.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was their account executive. That was the thing that I was doing as VP of operations. I was getting to know all the customers. And I went to them and I said, look, we got a choice. You can give us a prepaid service agreement, meaning you're going to give us money now, and then we're going to pay you back in fee holidays. Every 6 months, it'll be free. And another 6 months, it'll be free. And that was a deal for them because they're going to spend the money. Then the deal was basically, you like me, you like us, you want to continue. Here's a way that you can be a part of that continuation. Secretly, it was also a way I could raise money to fund a company where we didn't have the money and we would be paying it back in fee holidays, which was, 60% of our total revenue. So, like, having customers that respect you and want you to continue to live is probably the biggest thing in a company. And what I see with a lot of entrepreneurs is, I'm so impressed with myself that I made this gadget that will do the following thing, or this website, or this, app. We'll get to that in due diligence. What I want to know is, are there people who would fight and kill to keep you in business and to pay you every month and love you?
You're basically talking about MVP, and I always say this: get your client, because the moment you have your client, that's accountability. We talked about laziness. I can have a great idea, but most ideas are stillborn for a reason.
Yeah,
Even if
right.
you have it in a paper and have this nice business plan, it's not out into the world. And when you said this, I love it because Reid Hoffman,
Yeah.
founder of LinkedIn, he has this quote. I don't know if you heard it before. Jump off the cliff and build the plane on the way. I always say that. When I decided to be a coach, I got my first client and it was
Yep.
7,500. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's my first time. I've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
It was still a lot. Someone's actually paying for my service and not
Yeah.
raising money. But I remember I didn't know what I was doing because I'm new. But when you have that accountability, you will do. And if you care about your vision, if you care about going out there to serve, you will make it happen. And that to me
Right.
is leadership.
Exactly right.
Right. You have more to share. I know that. That's only one story.
Okay. Ask me another.
What other mistakes that you've seen founders make that you've went through it and you know that this is a message for them that they could learn from? Go ahead.
I think founders, because it's lonely, often they don't have folks who can help them get out of their own way and pivot. Almost every business I've been a part of, what I brought to it was a pivot. Hey, this isn't working. We're all going to give up on this. Let's do it differently. And that's hard because then you're taking all the responsibility on your shoulders for this crazy idea that we're going to do this instead of that. But again, 3 out of 4 times it's worked. And I feel like having someone, again, a mentor or even just a friend who knows you well, what's the opposite of love isn't hate, it's apathy. Like people who know you will do what you do, tough love, because that's love. Sometimes you need to hear the tough answer. And so I think part of being a CEO or a founder is making sure that you have relationships in your life that can challenge you. Because you're challenging the status quo. You're here beating back the barbarians. You got to have somebody who can tell you, yeah, there's something hanging out of your nose, and you kind of need to deal with that before you make your investor presentation.
So I actually have a question for you.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like you have a very supporting wife.
Yes.
When you said, I had this idea, I didn't know what I was doing, but this sounds easy. Your wife was on board with you.
Totally.
Because I know when you're doing that, your wife is really also a relationship with their company.
She is
How's that?
smarter than me, better in every respect. And in fact, it was her bonus that funded our first company. So she's great. She's a marketer. She was a category executive brand manager at like PepsiCo and SC Johnson. So she was behind this idea even when basically it meant we were going to move around the country. And so she's way smarter than me. And she also, I think, is the reason that I'm doing Tech Coast Angels, because I've been a serial entrepreneur. I really was kind of looking for another company to turn around. And she said, okay, wait a minute. But there was this company, the second company that you ran, you were a CEO for maybe 2 weeks. And then you stayed on the board and, helped fund them and stuff. That was the company that sold for $800 million. She said, so let's graph this. Okay. On a per day basis, the longer you run a company, the less money we make. So, let's think about maybe you're a great investor. You pick good ideas. And that was Ambry Genetics.
Oh my gosh. I always say this. This is like one of the life lessons I would tell myself. Who you marry, that person does become your business partner.
Exactly.
And who you get in relationships become a business partner, you guys are in a marriage, whether you like it or not.
Yes.
And your story is so inspiring because, your amazing wife is basically, she's your coach.
Yes.
She's your friend. She's here with you.
Yes.
And then tell us about this transition. Once you found yourself, you're like, oh, because to me, it's like, that's a change of mindset too. It's a change of identity and mindset. I don't need to be a founder. I could be at Tech Coast Angels and I could still do what I'm good at and, support other founders. And this goes back to what we were saying earlier. Career path does not have to be linear. Like so many founders, they start with an idea and they realize the business is not here, it's here, right? I don't know if you know the story of a scrub daddy. He basically started as a car detailing business and then got into the scrub business and then it branched out from there. That's a long story short. So I'd love to hear you, when you decided what came next, how did you get into the position that you're in?
Yeah.
And, and seeing, you say talk to thousands of founders. When you look at the founders and in the company, what do you look for? And then also I want to ask, because with the 4 companies done until now, we're talking about the 20s to 2026.
Right.
What the evolution changes.
Yeah.
From 20s to the .com boom to
Wow.
AI.
Yeah.
Right. I know that's a lot of questions. That's why I had to hold myself back, but I want to know.
It's all kind of related. What we're seeing now is the commodification of intelligence. And hey, we went through an industrial revolution where we replaced oxen with, and animals with humans, and humans with steam, and steam with fiber optic and compute. And I don't think, as humans, this has all been in the last 200 years.
Yeah.
It's not that much time, in terms of human evolution. So I don't think our brains are that well prepared for commodified intelligence. And I've got a friend, Vivian Ming, up in Silicon Valley, and she's a scientist, a mad scientist, according to her. But she had an article in the Wall Street Journal a few days ago about what is AI actually doing to our brains. And from my last company in neuroscience, I know a lot of these neuroscientists. It's not pretty. There are brains, and they've actually done fMRIs on kids, doom scrolling. There are parts of the brain that just shut down, that stop being used. Your cerebral frontal cortex is the part that processes things and makes really deliberative decisions, and the amygdala is the part of your brain that makes emotional decisions, fight or flight, kill this person for their hamburger. Okay, so we know which part of the brain we'd like to favor. Some of the smartest neuroscientists I know are working in AI at AI companies that are working the amygdala. And so if you see what's happening in our politics, what's happening in interpersonal relations with the web and AI, a lot of it is it's a rage economy, and we can make a lot more money doing advertising to people whose amygdala is activated. So what does that mean for people? For people, it means having some mindfulness about what AI can do for you. And as Vivian says in her Wall Street Journal article, there's kind of a great division. There's people who are intellectually curious, love to solve problems, and are using AI to do it. And there's people who are really excited that there's this thing that has the answers, the sum of all human intelligence, and they can click and get the answer. And when they've done studies on students who have access for the test to AI, those students don't remember the answers that they gave 30 minutes later. These people who have intellectual curiosity and ask the follow-up questions and draw notes and, draw boxes and circles and arrows, those are the people who win. My advice for founders is, if you're not one of those people, become one of those people, because the things that will make you never lose your job, always be successful, are being intellectually curious and problem solving and getting your dopamine from that. If instead you want to get your dopamine from scrolling Instagram, they're laying in wait for you.
To summarize it, as if you were to say, it's a thinking behind how you use AI.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
and not just
exactly.
like plug it in, whatever prompt, see it, use it, forget it.
Exactly.
The thinking brings in the curiosity.
You got it.
Right.
You got it. If you want to steal all the answers to the test, you can do that.
Yeah.
But you're cheating yourself.
Yeah. And from, your experience when you saw all this revolution to now, what are like the evergreen, I would say, problems and challenges that will still exist now, even with the industrial change? Because we're talking about industry, but we're also talking about, to your point right now, we're talking about the people that is building it.
Yep.
Right? Because we don't want to be replaced. I mean, for everyone that's listening,
Right.
I don't want you to be replaced.
Right.
What do you see and from all of your experiences?
A nice way to look at it is, so much of what we do in our jobs is cutting and pasting and clicking and finding information. And literally, that's maybe 40% of most people's jobs.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that anymore. I mean, we're not there yet, but we're pretty close to basically taking a lot of that administrivia and getting rid of it and freeing you up to actually do the critical thinking and the modeling. And I took a couple AI courses at Stanford during COVID, and one of the things they said is the dirty little secret of Silicon Valley is most of these tech companies take data, put it in a database, and then when you need it, give you data from the database. Like, that's not, this is not high tech. And And yet now what we're seeing is agentic AI, where you're not the one who has to take the data out of the database. You say, I want a complete business plan for my venture that is focused on the European market and with these constraints, and it will give you an answer. And really the challenge for people like us is, so what are you going to do with that? If you're just going to take it and present it to an investor, I'm going to know as an investor that you're just spitting out stuff from, it's AI slop. But if you can walk me through all the permutations and possibilities of that plan, like you wrote it yourself because you did, I'm going to give you money.
And so what I'm hearing is the agentic AI is here to work for us. They're going to give us information.
Yep.
Right. But us as people, okay, so this is what I'm getting to. The human relationship, the thinking, that's not going to go away. Investors they're still going to make judgments to invest in the person.
Yes.
Because that's ultimately, right?
That's the equity. Yeah.
It's the founder. Like, I know I have a good friend of mine. I used to work in the film business in Hollywood.
Yeah.
He always told me, we will never, ever invest in first-time directors because we want them to go out and to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And then based on that, if they still come back, then we will invest.
Yeah.
I would always remember that. Is that a quality that you look for?
Absolutely. Everything I am is an accumulation of my mistakes and then what I did about them. So I absolutely agree with that. I think most of us will lose our jobs in the next 10 years. It's, the Citrini Research Report, a lot of the things that have dug into this have said, look, that 40% layer, you compound that, you end up being able to take, I don't know, a third or half of most organizations out. But that doesn't mean there won't be jobs. People who have intellectual curiosity and can problem solve, they're next level. They're going up, and we will invent new things for them to do that will create the abundance that AI promises. I'm very optimistic about what AI can do, and I'm kind of optimistic about most people. Not everybody's going to find that exciting, but
curiosity and problem solve.
You got it.
Those are key things.
You got it.
So just a word from our sponsors, and we will be right back. I would like to introduce you to our sponsors because without them, this podcast cannot exist. So our first sponsor is Reed Smith. Reed Smith is a globally recognized law firm helping founders navigate every stage of growth from formation and fundraising to scale and exit. Our next sponsor is Sunstone. They support entrepreneurship, education, and inclusive innovation by partnering with universities, nonprofits like us, accelerators, and public-private initiatives to create opportunities for the next generation of founders. And last but not least, we have Clone Force. Clone Force builds digital teammates that help people get everyday work done 50 times faster around the clock. It's like having a digital teammate. So you just need to make one AI agent to help run the company. And together, these partners represents the future of entrepreneurship, combining technology, legal expertise, and community-driven opportunities to help founders build, scale, and succeed. And we just want to thank them because without them, this podcast will not exist.
Well, I'm curious. So in what you're seeing right now with founders that are coming and pitching you, what are the types of deals that you're interested in? What are the ones that you're looking at?
The starting principle is everything's AI. So I don't talk to you and say, hey, I'm going to go over to that switch and turn on a public utility that's going to give us electrons. I turn on the light. Same with AI. Every business is AI from now on. What I particularly like as a venture or angel investor is businesses that are deep tech, heavy industry, high asset load that can be transformed with AI. I'll give you an example. My first job out of college was at a steel mill. Funnest job ever. And I was on this statistical process control / accounting project where I was at the mill every day, and I drove miles and miles through the mill past these rusted ingots. And it just hit me kind of like the nursing home. Like, that's wrong. Why are we rusting all these ingots that are going to become a Honda Fender someday? And why are we carrying all this inventory? And so I had this idea, let's actually send a chemistry from the ingot as soon as we pull the mold off right to production control and compress the cycle from 2 or 3 years and a lot of rust to instant, which is what all manufacturing companies now, it's, zero weight state inventories. And that ended up saving the company $300 million and they implemented the whole thing after I was gone from the company. But that's when I realized everything is process engineering and finding a process that you can make better. And I think that's what entrepreneurs do.
And when you're looking at AI, are you categorizing the way they're looking at it and how they're using it?
Yeah.
Is there like a lens that you guys are using to kind of categorize them?
Yes. Do you do something, again, don't start with the AI and, I built this really cool bunch of boxes and circles. Start with the customer benefit. So there's 2 companies we've invested in this past quarter. And it's been a record quarter, like just right off the bat with TCA. One is a muon tomography company that can find gold, copper, rare earths in existing ore bodies using essentially space particles, muons, and measure how they are perturbed through the earth by the density of ore bodies.
What's a ore body?
An ore body is a big mountain with a bunch of copper and gold in it.
Okay.
That the current status quo is we drill a hole, and 80% of the time we're wrong. There's nothing there. And these guys, you drill that hole, and then they put their little sensor in, and the sensor can actually kind of like X-ray the mountain and say, not here, but 50 feet that way, there's a ton of copper or rare earths. And so it's a really cool technology. They've just had their first announcement of a big strike up in Idaho. And with the importance of rare earths and critical minerals, there's all kinds of money flowing into that space. So how do you do it? You have to have AI. You can't track every muon by hand. So I love that kind of deep tech investment. The other one is a company that was started by a Caltech MD, PhD, who had this idea that worms have lived in our bodies for millions of years, and they had to do something good to be able to be tolerated. A good parasite does not kill its host. So these worms actually have been secreting things that keep us from getting asthma or ulcerative colitis or esophagitis, other autoimmune diseases. Autoimmune diseases are rampant in the US and the EU and not rampant in the global South. Why is that? We don't have worms. They do. So she said, why can't I come up with a small molecule from these worms using AI that actually cures asthma or, atopic dermatitis? And these happen to be multi-billion-dollar drug platforms that all of pharma is starved to be able to find an oral agent to solve. So that's another example where the cool thing is the customer benefit. We know customers want to solve these problems, and they're spending $100,000 to $200,000 a year on Dupixent to do it. And instead, she can give you a pill that actually has been tested in nature for millions of years.
Fantastic. Can you take us back to the process? So let's take the the first startup. What was that process that TCA went through to meet the founder, get to know them, and then kind of collectively decide to make the bet? Can you take us through that?
Absolutely.
So our founders can understand the process at TCA.
It's kind of like panning for gold, pardon the pun, in the sense that I found them up at Berkeley Skydeck. It was every year Berkeley has these incubated companies. They've been brought along by, the engineering department or whatever at Berkeley. And I just happened to be there last year and saw them present and met the founders, and they met all of my screens. They were all about solving a problem for a customer. They had great technology. They understood AI. And they appeared to have resilience.
And before you continue on that story, so was it, just to clarify, was it a pitch event where you first saw them?
Yep. Yeah.
Great.
And there's a difference between Northern California and Southern California in terms of valuations. Almost all the last few years of the Y Combinator companies have done their pitch event, and they've already oversubscribed when they arrived at the pitch event. So it's hard to get some of these companies, and you got to overpay. But that doesn't mean they're everywhere. And at Berkeley, that's one of the things I love about Skydeck. They've got great companies, super strong on engineering, and they weren't oversubscribed. And you just had to kind of like a turnaround. You had to look for the thing, the frame of the house that you can build around, and they had it.
And for the early stage founders here that are listening that probably don't know what Skydeck is, can you explain what Skydeck is?
It's a accelerator at University of California at Berkeley that basically promises every good idea will get $200,000 from us, plus some venture sponsorship and a platform, and all the grad students and professors who can help advise them. And they spend maybe a year incubating their company. Now, I would have thought, okay, these are young, plucky grad students or undergrads. They're older folks. They're people who've been in their careers, working at Google for 10 or 20 years. And it's really surprising that, they get a mix of really strong people who've actually been out there in the ambient world doing business.
I have a question real quick, and I'll let you, because you talked about all ages. When you look at a founder, do you look, what are the characteristics? Do you look at the age? Do you look at the track record? What speaks to you that this person is worth investing?
Most of my investments, and that's me personally, have been in first-time founders.
Really?
I think that's because I like being mentor to, like you, I like coaching.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have something that can help them get on the right path. But I'm not ageist about it. I don't mind if you're a first-time founder at 55, as long as you've got kind of world experience that shows me you'll have the resilience, intellectual curiosity, problem-solving chops.
So can you take us back to the process? So you meet them up north at a pitch event.
Yep.
And then what happens next in the TCA process? I
reached out to them before becoming president here at TCA because I really wanted. I have a hidden agenda here, which is I'm trying to balance I call it a barbell strategy, but basically we had a lot of med tech companies that we funded, not too many tech companies. So I'm trying to get to 50-50. They were part of my 50. I'm also trying to find companies that have a legitimate, plausible exit within 3 or 4 years so that half of our investments are relatively good exits. And again, it goes back to what do I tell my wife? I want to be able to tell her I'm not investing in these quixotic ventures that maybe 15 years from now will pay off. I want things that have a shorter turnaround. So about 50% of our things are plausible exit in 4 years. 50% are potential unicorns where we may have to wait a decade, but they could be a unicorn.
To help define plausible, is it within a certain time frame and a certain multiple? Is there what's that box look like?
It's actually much less formal than that. It's
Okay.
Could they be acquired at any price that will generate a multiple on invested capital?
Is there a certain multiple that you're looking for?
We'd like 10.
Okay.
I've had an 80x and a 100x, so I'm I have a Disney level of optimism that we'll find a few that are 100x.
In terms of like a minimum multiple that you're looking for TCA, would you say 10 is kind of your threshold?
I mean, our average across the entire book is like 5.8.
Got it.
So, and part of what I'm doing, which is cheating the statistics, is internal rate of return is measured both on return and on number of years you hold the capital. So if I can bring the eyepiece back to 4 years, I'm only 4 years of hold, and it juices up the IRR.
Got it.
I can't believe I said that out loud. Now you know my secret.
And when you look for unicorn, what speaks to you to being a unicorn? Like, what do you look for?
It's funny because I actually have a lot of, I spent a lot of time with Sandhill Angels, and they've had 27. I don't think they even realized they've had 27, but some Harvard or Stanford professor wrote this up last year. And one of them, like I asked the president, what's your secret? He said, well, our last one was pretty litter. Okay. You think Silicon Valley, bunch of like chip designers, how did they come up with that as their big unicorn?
What's pretty litter?
Pretty litter, I think, is a litter box litter that looks nice when you pee in it. I don't know. Yes, for cats. For cats.
Yeah,
For cats.
okay.
Sorry.
So, tell me what it is again. So it's crystal litter.
Yeah, it's litter for your cat.
Okay.
That apparently looks better. I'm not sure after the urination or before.
Litter.
Pretty.
You know what? I have a cat.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go check it out. I will get back to you.
Thank you. But so you think you're going to end up with all of these really, really sophisticated companies, and a lot of their unicorns have been consumer packaged goods or other things that really hit. And I think so. Part of what that's taught me is I need to look more at the management team and the customer value and the customer discovery. And if that trues out, honestly, sort of the misconception about venture investing is we're not actually investing in unicorns. That's going to be a long time. We're making a proposition bet that they'll get to the next financing. So if you come to me with your business plan, I'm going to immediately go to the milestone page. You're going to do 4 things, Lillian. Great. You're going to do them in 3 years. Okay, we're going to give you $2 million, and we're going to hold you to those 4 things. It's going to turn out to be, you nailed 2, you missed 2. But you raise money now in your next Series A from a venture fund at 5x what we paid, and we're going to hold until you go public. That's sort of the real truth of our investing, is we're making proposition bets on you, on your idea, and your ability to execute. And we know that most of the time we're going to lose.
And what's the win rate out of 10?
You know, at a 5.8 multiple on invested capital says the bias is towards the win. The real truth of angel investing is, like I said, most of them are going to go out of business. So it's only a few, maybe like 3 companies out of 100 that are going to propel all of your wins and generate a return for investors. So that's part of the game here, is can I recognize 3 out of 100 and have the stones to invest in 97 out of 100 that are probably not going to return on capital.
And that 97, would you expect them to be 0?
Most companies, if they fail, they fail at a 1x or a 2x.
Okay.
But then about a third of the companies just fail. And the worst thing, again, if you're married, the worst thing is they fail early. So your failures happen within the first couple of years, typically. And then you've got to hold to get the strongest returns. You know, typically 10 to 12 years is when you start getting significant returns from those 3. So and so that's part of why I'm moving to a barbell strategy, where we've got some early wins just to keep people excited, to continue the secreting of dopamine in the part of the brain that makes decisions to write more checks.
What are you looking for here in Orange County? So I know you're pulling in the other end of the barbell from Northern California.
Yep.
Are you finding some of that here locally?
Yes. My goal, secretly, is to get more Silicon Valley type companies to start here or to grow here, because I think this is a better environment. I brought up my kids in Orange County. I think it's just a great place.
How do we get them here? Do we grow them, or do we import?
My view is they're already here. Like Caltech MD PhD. She didn't decide to be a treating doctor. She said, I'm going to take my PhD and my MD, and I'm going to actually treat millions of people with worm secretomes. So I think they're here. And the deeper mission for me is I feel like social mobility is the biggest thing that we do. Yeah, we're writing checks and hoping for a return, but who we write the checks to, I hope, are people who in the venture industry are typically overlooked. Women, minorities, people with tough backgrounds. Those aren't the people who typically get the checks. And I feel like if we start them, they can finish them, and we'll have some social mobility in Orange County, where people become, billionaire philanthropists, and hope they remember my name.
How do we find them, or where are you looking?
Well, we do a lot of stuff with schools. So we work with UCI, Westcliff, and I work a lot with schools outside of Orange County. And they come to us a lot. We get, again, like 1,000 applications a year, and we only invest in, a dozen or so.
Because I know one of the things I keep hearing, a couple of things. One, living in Orange County is expensive.
Yep.
So being a founder here is tough.
Yep.
It's tough to live here on a founder's paycheck.
For sure.
But the other one, especially if you're looking at UCI and comparing UCI, public school, to like Stanford private school,
yep.
I'm hearing a lot of, as I talk to the founders here, a lot of the founders here in Orange County or at UCI, they come from immigrant families.
Yep.
Right? So these immigrant families have invested all this time, money, energy to have their first college graduate emerge from their family.
Yeah.
They can't afford to go and be a founder. They need to go once they get the offer from a Microsoft or a Google, for a 6-digit first year. They have to take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus if you're at Stanford, it almost seems like there's already that family support and expectation that they're going to become a founder, and there's financial support behind them to take those years of being a founder. Are you seeing that same scenario?
I am, but I think the outlet for that is, again, I'm not ageist about founders. So if you're a 37, 55-year-old founder and you've been working for Google, hey, you've already passed through a bunch of filters. Yeah. One thing about we've had our kids at Google, and you go to Family Day, And it's just like summer camp. Like you go to family day and you get to see who works for Google. And it is absolutely everyone from every part of the world. It is a meritocracy, the smartest kids from everywhere. And that gives me hope in America. I think that's what America is a big melting pot of smarts where people come up with better ways to solve things, and we don't have kings or monarchic institutions that tell us how to behave and what caste you're in. You know, we are America, and we capitalize good ideas, and that's how we improve better than other parts of the world.
Do you think we attract those founders to Orange County just because of the safety and the beauty and the lifestyle they can have here?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And I have a question. So when founders come to you, let's say they have a full-time job,
Yep.
right? They're starting this on the side. There's some kind of attraction.
Sure.
Do you care if they do this full-time 100%? Do you expect that? Or do you expect this money comes in and they're going to be on it 100%?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
You know, that's part of the ripcord is you got to hit the silk and bail out and hope. When I started my first company, my wife left her job and we had a 1-year-old, and that was a lot of motivation to not screw this up. So I think every entrepreneur, and I don't care if they've had a failure before, but if they're going to fail on my dollar, I want full-time failure.
I always remember this quote by Barbara Corcoran. She always loves to invest in entrepreneurs that has their back against the wall.
Right.
They'll do whatever it takes.
Exactly right.
You're involved at, you said, with Sandhill Angels?
Yep.
Well, can you share a little bit about the differences that you're seeing between the Sandhill culture and community and what you're starting to see here in Orange County?
It's interesting because it is a very different mix of people. A lot of them are still working at, you know, Venmo or you know, PayPal or you know, Google. So they're kind of involved in venture investing. But generally what I see is because it's Silicon Valley, the valuations are just crazy. And they're okay with that because if they have a few unicorns, that covers a lot of crazy. And down here, I think the valuations are lower for the same kinds of ideas. There's a joke in Silicon Valley that you tell your investors you're doing AI, you tell your employees you're doing machine learning, and then you tell the engineers to do logistic regression. And the nuance of that is you can't, a black box that's a neural net like AI can't tell you how it got to the answer. And when I've been running medical tech companies, I don't want to be treated by a bot that doesn't know how it came to the answer. I need complete line of sight to the decision path. So I think a lot of the innovations that are being made now are not the smartest AI in the world, not the biggest colossus of data centers. It's the things that you can do where there's line of sight to an answer, and it's way better than the decisions that doctors would make unaided by data.
And to go back to, you said there's a difference in the valuation.
Yep.
What's the difference? How much of a haircut are we getting down?
20 to 50%.
20 to 50%?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like the studies they did on density of lawyers per capita, and there's more lawyers in Southern California per capita than anywhere else in the country. Why is that? Because it's a great place to live. And more lawyers, more lawsuits, more lawyers, more lawsuits. So same thing with money. Silicon Valley just has a density of tech people who've made money on their first or second or third company. And, you know, more dollars competing for fewer goods. Down here, less dollars competing for fewer goods. I think we win on valuation.
So based on the differences that you're seeing, what are some things? What are a few things we should do in our community here to improve it, to better serve founders?
I think this kind of comes back to coaching. I think the more founders who have somebody who's been there, who can tell them, unvarnished, yeah, it's going to be tough. You may not want to do it. But if you really have conviction, we'll find you money. That's part of what I think we do. That's what you're doing. And I think sometimes you just need that nudge to say, you know, if you fall, we'll catch you. Go ahead and try your idea. This is whatever age you are, you're young, and this is your chance to kind of live your dream.
And this is a great way to wrap this up. My last question for you is, at what point in your career did you feel like I finally made it? What was your overnight success moment that you're like, I did it?
To be honest, it was in high school. And just, I sort of found my thing with debate. I was a debater, and I was a national champion. And I think, when I was doing my thing in the finals, I realized like what I say in front of thousands of people can change people's minds and can change the world. And I actually led to a significant change in the way debate happened in high school after that. So that's when I kind of knew, wow, I am different than other people. That's kind of cool. How can I use that for good?
This is when you really understood your gift and you like led yourself there. I always say you got to lead yourself first before you can lead others.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And that's where we're at. So if someone is interested to find you guys and pitch you guys, where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Carpenter 4, and they can find TCA Venture Group also on LinkedIn. And we are constantly having guests at meetings. So just hit us up and we'll get you in a meeting. The meetings are fun. And we really do a great job, I think, of both educating and being educated at our monthly meetings.
I will have all of those in the show notes, and I want you to have back on again because you said the meetings are fun. That sounds like a really fun journey to learn about too. So before we wrap this up, is there any last word that you could give to our audience who are looking to start or scale a company?
In a way, we're all entrepreneurs. With what's going to be happening over the next few years, we're all going to be looking at what unique value do I contribute. It doesn't have to be starting a company, but think about your own skills and what you like to do, and think about kind of orthogonally different ways that you can do that. Start a bakery, start a tech company, but don't be afraid to try and step out of the standard lane that you're in, because all of us are going to be changing what we do, no matter, involuntarily. We're all going to be doing it over the next few years. And if you've got intellectual curiosity and problem-solving chops, then you're going to succeed.
Those are the two keywords. That's the two things I'm listening: curiosity and problem-solving. Write it down. Write it down. Okay. So thank you so much for taking the time to be on our show.
Thank you both.
And for everyone that's watching this, if you find value in this podcast, please go ahead and share with a friend, another founder, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. We're out everywhere and want to bring the communities together. See you guys in the next episode.